Iran Daily Briefing. Thursday, May 21, 2026. Iran says it is reviewing the latest U.S. position on ending the war, while Washington says talks with Tehran are on the borderline. That is today's central development. Diplomacy is still open, but it is moving alongside military warnings, regional mediation, and Israeli pressure. Al Jazeera says Israeli officials and media indicate renewed conflict is being considered. Middle East Eye, citing CNN, reports Benjamin Netanyahu pushed Donald Trump for renewed attacks. We will start with the U.S. Iran track, then turn to the Strait of Hormuz, Israeli calculations, and the case of two British nationals held in Iran. Today is Thursday, May 21, 2026. The main story is not a breakthrough. It is a negotiation track that remains alive while several actors prepare for the possibility that it fails. Iran says it has received Washington's latest views and is reviewing them. President Donald Trump, speaking Wednesday, said the United States would wait and see if a deal is reached. He also said the United States may have to attack Iran even harder and told U.S. Coast Guard Academy cadets that Washington will not let Iran have a nuclear weapon. At the same time, Pakistan is playing a visible role. Pakistani Interior Minister Syed Mohsin Naqvi met Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi in Tehran today. Middle East Eye also reports, citing Iranian accounts, that Pakistan is helping facilitate communication with the United States. In this episode, the state of the U.S. Iran talks, Tehran's use of the Strait of Hormuz as both a security and economic pressure point, Israeli discussions of renewed attacks, and a human rights case involving Lindsay and Craig Foreman. Our top story is the U.S.-Iran diplomatic channel. Al Jazeera reports that Iran says it is reviewing the latest U.S. response to a proposal to end the conflict. Al Monitor, citing Reuters, reports that Iran said on May 21 it was reviewing Washington's latest position on ending the war. Reuters, as published by Al Monitor, also reports that Iranian state-run agency Noor News quoted Foreign Ministry spokesperson Esmail Baghai as saying Iran had received U.S. views and was reviewing them. Middle East Eye reports that Iran's ISNA news agency said Tehran is responding to a text sent by the United States. Middle East Eye also reports that Baghai said Iran had received Washington's outlook during ongoing U.S.-Iran negotiations and that Noor News quoted him as saying Iran was reviewing those views. So the public Iranian line today is clear. Tehran has not announced acceptance or rejection. It says it has the U.S. position and it is reviewing it. From Washington, the message is mixed. Al Monitor reports that Donald Trump said Wednesday at Joint Base Andrews that talks with Tehran were on the borderline when asked where the talks stood. At the U.S. Coast Guard Academy, Trump said the United States would wait and see if a deal with Iran is reached. In the same setting, he said the United States may have to attack Iran even harder. He also told cadets that the United States will not let Iran have a nuclear weapon. Those statements put diplomacy and coercion side by side. Washington is not saying the talks are over, but it is also not lowering the military pressure in its public messaging. Tehran is making a similar dual argument. Mehr news agency and IRNA report that President Masoud Pezeshkian said forcing the Islamic Republic to surrender is nothing but an illusion. The same outlets report that Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi described fighting when necessary and negotiating where needed as a core mission assigned to Iran's diplomats and officials. That phrasing matters because it presents negotiation not as a concession but as one part of Iran's state response. Tehran is saying it can negotiate while maintaining its military posture. Regional mediation is also visible today. Mehr and IRNA report that Pakistani Interior Minister Syed Mohsin Naqvi met Araghchi in Tehran on Thursday. Middle East Eye reports that Iran said Pakistan's Interior Minister was in Iran to facilitate communication with the United States. There is also reporting on Pakistan's army chief, but the details conflict. Middle East Eye cites Isnai, reporting that Asim Munir was set to travel to Tehran. Another ISNA-based item says he visited Tehran. The provided intelligence does not reconcile the timing. What is clear is that Pakistan is being presented in Iranian reporting as part of the diplomatic channel. The Strait of Hormuz is another part of the pressure environment around the talks. Mehr and Iran report that the Islamic Revolution Guard Corps announced that ship passage through the Strait of Hormuz is being coordinated with the IRGC Navy. Middle East Eye reports that ISNA quoted the political deputy of the IRGC Navy as saying the Americans could not reopen the Strait of Hormuz despite continuous attempts. A related Middle East Eye item says the same official said the United States had failed to reopen the strait. At the same time, Iran is also describing a diplomatic mechanism for the waterway. Al-Monitor reports that Foreign Ministry spokesperson Esmail Baghai told State TV on Wednesday that Iran is seeking to establish a mechanism with Oman to ensure sustainable security in the Strait of Hormuz. Al-Monitor also reports that Baghai said Iran was ready to develop protocols for safe shipping traffic in cooperation with other coastal states. Middle East Eye reports that Al Jazeera said 137 countries supported a UN Security Council draft resolution on the Strait of Hormuz, seeking to protect international waterways. So on the strait, there are 3 tracks in today's reporting: the IRGC coordination of ship passage, Iranian claims about US failure to reopen the route, and diplomatic language about mechanisms and protocols for safe shipping. France 24 adds an economic dimension. It reports that Tehran is floating the idea of charging Google, Meta, Microsoft, and Amazon for using undersea internet cables crossing the Strait of Hormuz. France 24 also reports that Tehran is seeking to use its control over the strait to increase economic pressure on the West. The diplomacy is therefore not taking place in isolation. It is tied to maritime control, economic pressure, and threats of renewed force. The regional military environment is also shifting. Al-Monitor reports that Turkey said Wednesday that Germany would send it a Patriot missile defense system for a 6-month deployment from June amid the war in Iran. Al-Monitor also reports that Ankara said in March that a US Patriot system was deployed to southeast Turkey in response to missile threats from Iran. That adds another regional layer to the conflict environment around the talks. The forward-looking point is specific. Watch for whether Iran's review of the US position produces an official response, and whether that response comes through the foreign ministry, state media, or the Pakistani channel now visible in Tehran. The first developing story is Israel's posture toward the conflict. Al Jazeera reports that Israeli officials and media indicate renewed conflict with Iran is being actively considered. Al Jazeera also reports that renewed conflict with Iran is being considered despite a US ceasefire. Middle East Eye, citing CNN, reports that US officials and Israeli sources said ongoing US-Iran negotiations have frustrated Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Middle East Eye also reports that a source told CNN Donald Trump and Netanyahu had a tense conversation on Tuesday about how to approach the war on Iran. During an hour-long conversation with Trump, Netanyahu pushed for a resumption of attacks on Iran, according to Middle East Eye's account of CNN reporting. Haaretz reports that sources in Israel's defense establishment said Washington may have informed Israel's political leadership in advance about an intention to attack Iran on Tuesday. Those reports place Israeli discussions of renewed attacks alongside continuing US-Iran exchanges. Iran has also issued a warning. CNBC reports that Iran's paramilitary Revolutionary Guard issued a statement Wednesday, threatening to extend the Middle East conflict beyond the region if the United States and Israel resume attacks against Iran. DailyMail.com reported the same warning, that the war would extend beyond the region if the United States and Israel resumed attacks on Iran. The grounded thing to watch here is whether Israeli officials publicly confirm any shift in posture and whether Washington or Tehran responds directly to the reports of tension between Trump and Netanyahu. The second developing story is the Strait of Hormuz. The strait appears in today's intelligence as a military, diplomatic, and economic file. Mehr and IRGNA report that the IRGC announced ship passage through the strait is being coordinated with the IRGC Navy. Middle East Eye reports that the political deputy of the IRGC Navy said the United States had failed to reopen the strait. ISNA, according to Middle East Eye, quoted the same official as saying the Americans could not reopen it despite continuous attempts. On the diplomatic side, Al-Monitor reports that Ismail Baghai said Iran is seeking to establish a mechanism with Oman to ensure sustainable security in the strait. He also said Iran was ready to develop protocols for safe shipping traffic with other coastal states. On the economic side, France 24 reports that Tehran is floating the idea of charging Google, Meta, Microsoft and Amazon for using undersea internet cables crossing the strait. France 24 also reports that Tehran is seeking to use its control over the strait to increase economic pressure on the West. These are different instruments, but they point to the same file. Tehran is treating the strait as a lever in the wider confrontation. The grounded thing to watch is whether Iran gives formal detail on the proposed Oman mechanism, safe shipping protocols, or the reported plan to charge major US technology companies for cable use. The third developing story is a human rights case involving two British nationals. The BBC reports, according to their family, that Lindsay and Craig Foreman are being held in an Iranian jail and have each spent several days refusing food. The BBC also reports, according to their family, that the Foremans are from East Sussex. The provided intelligence does not include charges, court details, or an Iranian official response, so the verified facts today are limited. Their family says they are in an Iranian jail and says both have refused food for several days. The grounded thing to watch is whether the BBC, the family, or Iranian authorities provide further detail on their condition, legal status, or access to consular support. The fourth developing story is a US military investigation into a strike in Iran. Al-Monitor reports that a US military commander said Tuesday that a US military investigation into a strike at a girls' school in Iran was approaching its conclusion. Al-Monitor also reports that Reuters first reported an initial internal US military investigation showed US forces were likely responsible for a fatal strike in Minab. The provided intelligence does not give casualty figures or the timing of the strike. It also does not give the commander's name. The key development is that the investigation is nearing completion, according to the US military commander cited by Al-Monitor. The grounded thing to watch is whether the US military releases the investigation's findings and whether those findings confirm, revise, or reject the initial internal assessment reported by Reuters. The opening thread was the gap between diplomacy and renewed military pressure. Here is the fuller picture from today's reporting. Iran says it has received Washington's latest views and is reviewing them. Al Jazeera reports that diplomacy with the United States remains open. Al-Monitor, citing Reuters and Noor News, reports that Foreign Ministry spokesperson Ismail Baghai said Iran had received US views and was reviewing them. Middle East Eye reports that ISNA said Tehran is responding to a text sent by the United States. Washington says the talks are not settled. Al-Monitor reports that Donald Trump said talks with Tehran were on the borderline. He also said the United States would wait and see if a deal is reached. In another statement Wednesday, he said the United States may have to attack Iran even harder and said Washington will not let Iran have a nuclear weapon. Pakistan is present in the channel. Mehr and Irana report that Pakistani Interior Minister Syed Mohsin Naqvi met Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi in Tehran today. Middle East Eye reports that Iran said Naqvi was in Iran to facilitate communication with the United States. Israel is also part of the pressure around the talks. Al Jazeera says Israeli officials and media indicate renewed conflict is being considered, and Middle East Eye, citing CNN, reports Netanyahu pushed Trump for renewed attacks. That is the picture today. An active diplomatic exchange, public military warnings, Pakistani mediation and Israeli pressure reported around the same negotiation track. In the next 24 to 48 hours, watch 3 items. First, watch for Iran's formal response to Washington's latest position. Al Jazeera reports that Iran is reviewing the latest U.S. response. Al Monitor, citing Reuters and Noor News, reports that Iran has received U.S. views and is reviewing them. Middle East Eye reports that ISNA said Tehran is responding to a text sent by the United States. Second, watch the Pakistani mediation channel. Mehr and Irana report that Pakistani Interior Minister Syed Mohsin Naqvi met Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi in Tehran today. Middle East Eye reports that Iran said Naqvi was in Iran to facilitate communication with the United States. On the Army Chief file, Middle East Eye cites ISNA reporting that Asim Munir was set to travel to Tehran. Another ISNA-based item says he visited Tehran. The provided intelligence does not reconcile the timing. Third, watch the Strait of Hormuz file. Mehr and Irana report that ship passage through the strait is being coordinated with the IRGC Navy. Al Monitor reports that Iran is seeking a mechanism with Oman for sustainable security in the strait, and says Iran is ready to develop protocols for safe shipping traffic with other coastal states. France 24 reports that Tehran is floating the idea of charging Google, Meta, Microsoft and Amazon for using undersea internet cables crossing the strait. Today's briefing covered Iran's review of the latest US position, Pakistan's visible role in the diplomatic channel, Israeli discussions of renewed conflict, the Strait of Hormuz, and the case of Lindsay and Craig Foreman. We'll be back tomorrow with the next Iran Daily Briefing. For full written briefs and source-backed updates, check out the Iran Brief on Substack. Paid members can build multi-country monitoring across the countries they care about, with personalized briefings delivered automatically.